Our last story tonight concerns California's law AB 1887, which was put into effect last winter. You know, the one you got an email about but completely disregarded because it wasn't about a class getting canceled. Well, that law focuses on denying state funding for travel to 8 other states who still implement laws which allow organizations to discriminate due to a person's sexual orientation or gender identity. These states are Kentucky, North Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, Kansas, and South Dakota. You know, the hateful eight. The first 6 states where their main exports are Bibles and abstinence, and then there's Kansas and South Dakota, whose lackadaisical attitude toward keeping laws up to date is shown in some laws that they haven't even bothered to change. For example, in South Dakota, it is still illegal to lie down and fall asleep in a cheese factory. And in Derby, Kansas, it is illegal to hit a vending machine that stole your money. At least some groups have rights in Kansas. Fight the power, guys. So, California has stepped in to take a stance against LGBT+ discrimination laws by banning all state-funded travel to these states. Travel costs include hotel rooms, food, transportation, and whatever other expenses you could possibly incur in Texas and Mississippi, which I can only assume are souvenir-embalmed bull scrotums and banjos. This law aims to stop these states from profiting directly from California until the rights of LGBT+ members are legally protected. When this law was enacted, the California legislature had this to say: California must take action to avoid supporting or financing discrimination against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. This is basically the political version of not giving that one kid a Valentine in your 3rd grade because they were a total butthead. How does it feel, Kentucky? Hurts, doesn't it? California prides itself on trying to be a leader when it comes to LGBT+ rights, and this was its latest attempt to push for such rights nationally. However, here at Nightcap, we don't believe that this law is really bringing the change that it advertises. The LGBT+ community needs real, tangible change, and we feel that this law simply doesn't do enough. California has made these claims that it won't tolerate this anti-LGBT+ bigotry, yet they have left large holes in the law which allow them to dodge any financial repercussions. And there are a lot of different ways to cover this topic. We could talk about college athletics and how this law could force the state to make a decision between sending a message and receiving millions in revenue. We could talk about academic conferences and how this law may inhibit Californian students from attending and thus impeding their academic pursuits. And there are other areas that this law would impact, but since unpacking these issues would keep all of us here past our bedtime, we are just going to call this law out on its lack of effectiveness. There are many ways of getting around this travel law, literally, and that's a serious flaw when it is specifically designed to stop travel. Californian schools can send students and have them stay just outside the border of the states and then drive in for their game or conference. This is the equivalent of putting your hand a lickable distance from your sibling's face and saying, "I'm not touching you! I'm not touching you!" Finn's very familiar with that one. Also, the states in question understand that this practice is taking place and can exploit the loopholes. Colleges and other organizations can schedule conferences near the border of the state to make it easier for California schools to get there. So when it comes to keeping people out, this law is basically as effective as this condom. In a state like California, where it is always advantageous for legislators to push the subject of LGBT+ rights, this decision to come out against these states is a no-brainer, especially in today's political environment. And though this law may spark change, it seems mostly to be a tool to get legislators reelected by passing a law that looks impressive but really lacks in substance. It's like turning in a 30-page English paper, but after the 3rd page, it turns into a script from season 4 of iCarly, which is nothing more than a sorry attempt to rekindle the magic of Drake and Josh. You can't replace them! They were bigger than TV! Now, if legislators want to take a stance, then they should take harsher action and force the hand of these states to change their ways, because it's too easy to get around the parameters of this law. It's like when you have to avoid running into that one creepy homeless guy who always asks you for cigarettes. Totally doable, you may just have to avoid taking the obvious route home. Legislators haven't even made a decision on whether or not sports programs will be impacted under this law. This only shows how non-committal we are to this legislation, similar to the way a cat can't commit to being inside or outside. I don't care what you do, Sprinkles, but make a fucking decision. And though some programs are taking steps to abide by this law, like UC Berkeley not scheduling basketball games in these states, this is far from ironclad. We find that this legislation makes it look like legislators are standing up for LGBT+ rights, though programs are still able to go to these places regardless of what the law states. So, the Nightcap team has decided to come up with our own plan that we feel could spark some change in the minds of the legislators of these 8 states. Ours is just as enforceable as this travel law and way more fun. We are calling for the help of the McDonald. The only clown I truly trust after seeing the movie It. Yes, Ronald McDonald, the spokesman for the McRib, which is basically meerkat meat mixed with orca placenta, can play a role in this advocacy. In fact, he already has. For those of you who may not remember, back in June of this last year, the McDonald's of San Francisco, DC, and a few other places produced LGBT+ fries containers in support of Pride Month. So we think that this is a great way to push this. A great way to push this issue is for McDonald's to make these sole containers for all their restaurants and have these states serve each customer with these LGBT+ supportive containers. And this would have a huge impact. Texas has the second most McDonald's in the country with over 1,200 locations. North Carolina comes in 10th on that list, and Kansas is 3rd in the nation in McDonald's per capita. We think that this would start a conversation and lead to a change in these laws faster than this current law. So, in these 8 states, McDonald's should make this the standard container for all their food, just like how Kentucky and Tennessee have made incest their sole pastime. Now, some may say that there is an easy way to get around this, the answer being to not go to McDonald's. Well, we're a step ahead of you. These 8 states have some of the highest rates of obesity in the nation. Alabama alone spends $2.5 billion per year on obesity-related expenses. And to put that in perspective, with that money, you could afford to have Morgan Freeman narrate your life 24 hours a day for 28 years. So if these people all do stop going to McDonald's just so they don't have to see these containers, then this is a classic 2 birds, 1 stone scenario. We are advocating for LGBT+ rights and fighting obesity. This could only be bested if Billie Jean King, Michelle Obama, and Laverne Cox dropped a mixtape about accepting your sexuality and eating broccoli. So, in closing, we feel the best way to push the main course of this issue is to ask these 8 states, would you like fries with that bigotry?